You know, when you hear the word intelligence, your mind probably jumps straight to the movies, right? You're thinking car chases, crazy gadgets, James Bond. But what is intelligence really all about when it comes to keeping nations safe? Well, we're going to pull back the curtain and separate the Hollywood fantasy from the fascinating reality. Let's dive in.
So let's start with this question. When I say spy, what pops into your head? For most of us, it's this image of a lone wolf, operating in the shadows, single-handedly changing the course of history. It's a really cool, really romantic idea.
But the truth, well, as it usually is, the truth is a little less cinematic. It's way more complicated. Because in the real world, it is almost never about just one person making all the difference. What we're actually talking about is a massive, global, and incredibly complex system. It's a state-run machine, really. A whole web of organizations and processes and people all working together to get information to the world leaders making the big decisions. And that's exactly what we're going to unpack today.
Okay, so to really get our heads around this system, we have to start with the basics. What are we actually talking about when we say intelligence in this whole national security context?
The scholar Mark Lonthal gives us this really fantastic, clear definition. And the key word here is process. See, it's not just about stealing secrets, it's a whole pipeline. It's about figuring out the right questions to ask, then going out and collecting the info, then making sense of it all, and this is crucial, getting it to the people who actually make the decisions.
Now, you might think this is all pretty modern, right? A product of the Cold War, maybe? Well, think again. It's not modern at all. What's so amazing is just how far back this goes. I mean, we're talking about religious texts where Moses deploys spies, ancient strategy guides like Sun Tzu's The Art of War and India's Arthashastra. The practice of spying is literally thousands of years old. It's fundamental.
So how do we get from those ancient practices to the huge global infrastructure we see today? Let's take a look at the major players on the world stage right now.
I bet you recognize this seal. The CIA is easily one of the most famous and definitely one of the most influential intelligence agencies on the planet. They handle foreign intelligence and covert ops for the United States.
But wow, they are far from the only game in town. This table really gives you a sense of the global scale. In the US, you have the CIA for human intelligence, but also the NSA for signals intelligence. Over in the UK, you've got their famous counterparts, MI6 for foreign stuff and MI5 for domestic. Russia's main agencies, the FSB and SVR, are basically the modern successors to the old KGB. And of course, you've got huge players like China's Ministry of State Security and Israel's Mossad. Every major nation has its own complex web of agencies, each with a very specific job.
Okay, so how do all these agencies actually work? I mean, they can't just go out and collect random stuff. There has to be a system, and there is. It's a formal process, a loop known as the intelligence cycle.
This is the CIA's version, and it's a great blueprint for how it works pretty much everywhere. It all kicks off with planning. A policymaker has a question, something they need to know. Then comes collection. That's the actual spying part. After that, all that raw data has to be processed into something an analyst can actually read and use. Next is analysis, which is where they connect the dots and figure out what it all means. Finally, that finished analysis gets disseminated or delivered right back to the policymaker who asked the question. And then it starts all over again. It's a constant, never-ending loop.
All right, let's zoom in on that collection phase for a second. Where does all this information actually come from? Well, in the intelligence world, they love their jargon, and they call the different sources the ints.
Yeah, it's a whole alphabet soup of acronyms, I know. But they're really just different categories for different kinds of information. For instance, HUMINT comes from human sources. SIGINT is from electronic signals. And OSINT is open source stuff that anyone can find, like news reports or social media. Let's just take a closer look at a couple of the really big ones.
So, HUMINT. This is what most of us think of as classic old-school spying. It's all about finding and recruiting people, human sources, who can give you secret information that you just can't get any other way.
Then you've got SIGINT, which is kind of the other end of the spectrum. Signals intelligence is the super high-tech side of the business. We're talking about intercepting communications, phone calls, emails, any electronic signal flying through the air between people or machines. This is the world of agencies like the NSA.
And this picture is a brilliant example of another INT. This is IMENT, or Imagery Intelligence, and it's so much more than just satellite photos. It can be incredibly advanced, like this infrared image that's showing heat signatures. It lets you see things that are totally invisible to the naked eye. Pretty cool, right?
So why do all this?
Why have this massive, secret, incredibly expensive infrastructure? Well, because the stakes are just astronomically high. When it works, it can prevent wars. But when it fails, it can be absolutely catastrophic.
This ancient wisdom from Sun Tzu just nails it. At the end of the day, the goal of intelligence is to avoid being surprised. It's about understanding the world so clearly that you can navigate all its dangers without having to resort to a fight. But sometimes the system fails, and Pearl Harbor is the textbook example of what a catastrophic intelligence failure looks like. The clues were there, the signals existed, but they just weren't put together in time to stop a devastating surprise attack that pulled the United States right into World War II.
And these kinds of failures, tragically, are not that rare. And often it's for deeply human reasons. You can fail to detect a threat because analysts just see what they expect to see. Or you can fail to act on good intelligence because of bureaucracy. The info gets stuck in the wrong inbox. Then there's something called blowback, which is when a secret operation, like arming a group of rebels, ends up creating a brand new enemy 20 years down the road. And of course you've got leaks, which can cripple an agency's ability to do its job.
All of these failures, and the secret operations themselves, lead us right to the central tension of the entire intelligence world. That constant, incredibly difficult balancing act between the need for secrecy to keep us safe and the need for transparency in a democracy to protect our freedom.
This slide lays out that tension perfectly. In a healthy system, politics is led by intelligence. Leaders get the objective facts, and then they decide what to do. The real danger is when that gets flipped. When a leader has already decided what they want to do, and they just ask their spies to find evidence to justify it. That's called the politicization of intelligence, and it can lead to absolute disasters.
And as the power of these agencies grows, so do the risks of them going too far. Excess intelligence isn't just about having too much data, it's about a lack of oversight. And that can lead to a serious abuse of civil liberties, like spying on your own citizens. It can create legal black holes where human rights are violated. And it can create a culture where national security is just used as a magic word to hide mistakes or corruption or even illegal acts from the public.
Which brings us to our final, and I think really provocative question to chew on. With this explosion of data and surveillance tech everywhere, have we actually reached a point where we have too much intelligence? Is the sheer volume of information and the power of the agencies that collect it becoming a danger in and of itself? That is the debate that is going to shape the future of security and liberty for all of us.